Welcome back to Our Community. Susie Thomas visiting with Lisa Paramore. She is Communications Director, is that right? Public relations person for the Stark County Board of Developmental Disabilities. And you are facing some changes now. So let's talk about those. First of all, if you can let us know what kinds of changes, Lisa.
Sure. There have been changes. I know the community of they've maybe seen some of them, talked about in the paper and in the media. And the biggest thing that needs to be understood and why we're having so many public meetings, communicating a lot with our families, is that these changes that are going on are a result of something that's much bigger than Stark County. It's bigger than the state of Ohio. It is going on federally. And there is a change in how we support and include people with developmental disabilities. So locally, I know that people may have been aware that after the first of the year in January, we did consolidate our adult program, our sheltered workshops. We went down to 2 workshops. We had 3 at one point. And so we did do that. It is a consolidation. Nobody was sitting at home without some place to go during the day, which is very important because I know people were worried about that. So when we decided to consolidate, we now have our Lester Higgins workshop, which is down in the Canton South area, and then our West Stark Center, which is out on Hills and Dales in the Massillon area. And so when we announced, and families had about a year, they knew that we were consolidating and what building was going to become strictly an administrative center. So they had a year to choose where they wanted to go for their day program services. So some families chose to stay at the sheltered workshops operated by Stark DD, and others started exploring and choosing the other community providers that provide both day programming, day habilitation support. And so there was a year-long, we did field trips and information to help individuals, the adults, and their families make decisions where they wanted to receive their services from.
What kind of communication integration goes among all the different agencies, organizations that provide these kinds of services?
The biggest thing that ties everybody together is our Service and Support Administration Department. They're known as SSAs. They are your case managers. And those folks are required by law if an adult has any sort of funding that comes. And most of that funding is, as we've talked about, is either those local tax, a combination of local tax dollars or through federal Medicaid dollars. And so that's why some of these, we're seeing that overarching emphasis of the federal changes that are coming down. And so through our SSAs, that's where we communicate with everybody, and we know what community providers there are, what they're good at, and helping families connect with those community supports.
When we're talking about these changes, then it's important for us to understand that you did not sign up for this.
No, that's what we need to get on to and talk about next, is that because these folks receive Medicaid dollars for whether it's their day program or where they choose to live, then we basically need to go under the rules of the federal Medicaid system. And so they have recently, they came out, and not only to the state of Ohio, but they have been looking at programs in every state across the nation. And they have come in and said, either we don't feel that adults that receive these Medicaid dollars, they're not a part of their community. It's not integrated. When we don't like it, and you need to change it. They have also said that we feel for some of you, there's a conflict of interest. And they have said, if you write a person's plan, which is what our case managers do, they come in and they help a person figure out, how do you want to spend your day? How can we keep you safe? Where do you want to live? And so if we write that plan, which is what Stark DD SSAs do,
yes,
but also provide that service, that federal Medicaid has said, that's a conflict of interest.
Let me stop you there, Lisa. How is that different than what an educator does in a classroom? You have students, they know the different levels of learning abilities of each student, they create plans, and then they provide the service and are paid for it by state, federal dollars. How does that differ from what you're saying?
Well, let's talk to Medicaid about that. And I think that's some of the concerns and what families are bringing up. But I think that it has to come in to play that, there's a large amount of money that comes in from Medicaid. And do we want to say, they're setting the rules and they don't know our folks, they don't know the needs?
Right.
And I think families can make a case for that, but truly, it's beyond our control.
Right.
We have to come into compliance. They've said if you don't solve this conflict of interest, you can't write the plan and possibly say, and the very best place for that person to spend their day is at Stark County Board of DD and turn around and send the money right back to your own door when there's, by statute, by Ohio law, free choice of provider. And sometimes they may feel that case manager, even though they're neutral, that they may be not as neutral as they need to be.
Okay.
So it's a very challenging situation for families. But if we don't come into compliance with what federal Medicaid is telling us, get rid of that conflict-free case management issue, and help make programs and help the day and life of a person with disabilities be more integrated and part of their community, then that funding is at risk. And they could stop funding and sending those federal dollars, which we've committed to a person for their lifetime.
Yes, and that's the bottom line, isn't it? Because, again, you did not sign up for this. These are things that are being told to you that you must comply, or people will not have the funding anymore to receive the services at all. When we talk about these changes, and let me just remind us all that we're speaking with Lisa Paramore from the Stark Board of DD. When we're talking about these changes, we're primarily talking about changes in adult programming, aren't we, Lisa?
Correct.
Not the children.
Yes, because the schools and any funding with that is directly related to those educational funds. So yes, this is those services that have to do with federal Medicaid dollars received to support, whether again it's that day habilitation or their residential supports. Anytime that they have funding through a waiver that comes and involves federal Medicaid dollars.
We are talking about vital contributing members of our community and how best we as a community can rally around them and show our support. So what are we doing? You've got some focus groups coming up?
Yeah, so we are continuing to try and let families, stakeholders know what's going on and how we can begin to make these changes, because what federal Medicaid came in and said is that you need to decrease. We're going to give you 10 years. Initially, they were only going to say 5 years to solve this conflict of interest and community integration, because they feel our sheltered workshops are segregated and that people don't have the opportunity to be around in their community, that they are only with other people with disabilities. So initially they said 5 years, and the state petitioned federal Medicaid and said, we can't make these changes that quickly without really causing great upset. And so they went ahead and they are giving us 10 years to 2024 to make the changes. They have, however, said, okay, but we want to make sure that you're making strides towards that. So they have created goals that we need to do every few years. And so what that is going to do is force us to continue to decrease the number of adults that are receiving services, program services directly from Stark DD, and connecting them more with providers in our community. And so that's what these focus groups are about. How are we, and this is not only day program, this is also transportation. You see our yellow buses on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So this affects, because that is also part of how they get around, and that's using some of those federal Medicaid dollars. So all of that is going to have to change. And so our focus groups, we have community members, these community providers,
Mm-hmm.
where they're going to start getting the people that we used to serve to them. And so we're all putting our heads together to figure out how can we do this smoothly without great upset to the people that it affects, and make sure ultimately that we always are ensuring the health and safety of people that are receiving these services.
What kinds of good questions should families ask as they're trying to seek out who their new provider will be? What makes a good provider?
Sure. And I think that's a great question. And just to remind people that community providers, there's certification involved, and they go through the state to get certified to be a provider. And the same thing that we do at Stark DD. And so there's a very strict regimen of what they need to do, including background checks. If this is a person that you are looking to provide transportation for your loved one to their day program or maybe to an outing, you want to say, hey, you're background checking. Let's see your vehicle records. Are you keeping your vehicle inspections up to date? How about driving records? Those are all things, and there's several tools out there that can help families know the kinds of questions that they should ask. And the SSA, that Service and Support Administrator, they can also help families figure out those questions. Again, they have to remain neutral on directing. They can't say, one way or the other necessarily about a provider, but they can certainly help. These are the questions that you are perfectly in your right to ask. Ask these records. You can go on even to the state website through a portal on providers and look up their ratings. Look up if they've had any citations. And these SSAs can help families know where to go to find this information.
But you're saying by 2024, Stark Board of DD will not offer any of these services to adults, or will they be an option that families can choose?
It is to be in compliance. We're not going to be able to offer adult services.
So you will offer services up to what age then?
It will be through our school age programs.
Okay.
So 22. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In school programs, kids can stay in for additional education just like they can in the public school.
Our time is flying, and you have events coming up. Tell us very briefly what's happening.
We do, yeah. We have always, of course, associated with our levy educational information. We have a group of volunteers that do fundraising, so we can help continue to educate the community about these changes, why these changes are coming. So we have a golf outing. It's our 6th annual. It's on May 20th at beautiful Glenmore Country Club. So if any of you have ever been dying to get onto the Glenmore course and play, so we have that. It's a shotgun start. All levels of golfers are welcome. It's a great time. And then we also are having a poker run in June, on June 18th. And we're excited about this because it's not only there's going to be motorcycles, but also a car division. So people of all ability levels can participate in the poker run. So we can have a car of folks with disabilities and a driver.
Awesome. For more information, go to starkdd.org. Lisa Paramore, thanks so much for joining us today on Our Community.